2018 Candidates Debate for the March 20th General Primary Election. Thank you all again very much for attending tonight's event. My name is Jim DiDonato, and I am the director at the Round Lake Area Library. Tonight we are partnering with students from Round Lake Area School District 116 High School. Tonight we have with us Principal Mr. Michael Berry, we have the Social Studies Division Chair, Sarah Fontana, with us tonight. We also have AP Government teacher, Laura Massesas, with us this evening. Thank you all very much for helping the kids tonight. We will have Sam and Marco, who are tonight's moderators, introduce themselves and some other folks in a little bit. But let me just give a shout out to WRLR for partnering with us. Also, thank you very much to the Village of Round Lake Beach for providing this facility to us free of charge for the evening. One of the endorsements that I would definitely like to mention to everyone is that we have worked with the Village of Round Lake Beach on many different events and activities, and they're really a good group of people to work with. So if you have weddings, birthdays, any other celebrations, I highly recommend them. Also, thank you very much to you, our audience members. You've come out on a night where you could have been home doing some other things, but you've chosen to learn a little bit about our candidates. So thank you very much. And of course, I also want to mention our candidates. We know that it takes a lot to run for any office, and some of the people that I have seen run for office, they go through a very grueling process. So to our candidates, thank you very much for being part of our process and helping us out. Thank you. Just to let everybody know, we're going to go over a couple of the general announcements. We expect that everyone will understand that this here event tonight is an educational event. This event is designed to provide residents an opportunity to get first-person responses from our candidates. This is for everyone, and it is expected that everyone will be respectful of others and avoid argumentative tones in our discussion. Everyone has the right to hear what each candidate has to say, so we ask that you keep your comments to the end of the debate so everyone has a chance to listen to the candidates. At this time, I would like to hand the microphone over to our two moderators, Sam and Marco.
Welcome to the March Primary Election Candidate Forum. My name is Marco Alejandro Hernandez, and this is Samuel Ruiz. We will be your moderators for the evening. As advanced placement government students at Round Lake High School, we appreciate the opportunity to be civically engaged in our local community. In order to ensure that we have a respectful and orderly discussion, we will enforce the following rules. Candidates and audience members are expected to be respectful and avoid argumentative tones. Everyone deserves to hear what the candidates say. Please submit your questions via index cards and hold comments or applause to the end of the debate. Debate sponsors reserve the right to review, select, and reword questions submitted by the audience for clarity, appropriateness, time, and to avoid duplication. Speaking order will be determined in a random manner before each debate begins, and candidates will alternate their order as directed by the moderator. Speaking times will be timed, and candidates will be signaled with a yellow card when they have 30 seconds remaining and a red card when their time is up. Each candidate will be allowed 90 seconds to make an opening statement. Responses to questions are limited to 60 seconds, and closing statements are 60 seconds as well. Upon agreement from the candidates, the moderator may extend or shorten response times. All candidates will have the opportunity to answer any questions posed. Please construct your questions with this in mind, but if a question is directed to a specific candidate, all candidates will have their 60 seconds to respond to it. Candidates will restrict themselves to answering questions posed by the moderator. Exchanges between candidates will be ruled out of order. Our first debate will be for the Lake County Board District 3 between Mr. Barr and Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Barr, you have 97 seconds to make your opening statement. You may begin.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss who I am, why I think I'm the right candidate for the right time, and how I can best represent you in Lake County. My name is Dick Barr. I'm a family man. I live here. Excuse me, sorry, is that better? I live here in the district with my beautiful wife and 4 amazing kids. I'm a small business owner. I serve on the Round Lake Beach Planning and Zoning Commission, and I also serve on the Police Foundation Board. Lake County is responsible for over 2,700 employees and a budget of over $500 million, of which 32% is made up of property taxes. This role is a huge responsibility. The best way that I can represent you in County Board is to not only focus on cutting expenses, sharing services, and pooling purchasing power, but to also work with all of our taxing bodies and have them hold the line on their runaway spending. My background as a family man, a small business owner, and a frustrated homeowner is exactly why I am the right candidate for the right time for Lake County. Thank you.
Please hold a pause to the end. Mr. Mitchell, you also have 90 seconds to make your opening statement. You may begin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for hosting this event. One of the things that's significant about this event is the races are contested. And so your walkaway for next spring is to have contested elections for every one of the races that are there. That will be one of the ways in which you can have a takeaway from this debate and Mr. Barr's success or my success to help lower property taxes in our area. I have served on a variety of municipal boards beginning in 1974 as a precinct committeeman, trustee with West Deerfield Township, president of Mosquito Bay District, president of a drainage district, and 2 different stints on the Lake County Board / Forest Preserve. One of the things that I want to make a pledge to you to hold taxes and to hold the line. The combination of pay for County Board and Forest Preserve is almost $50,000. And so one of the things I want to do is lobby all of my other, if I'm successful, County Board candidates to say we need to give up our salary first. And that's how we can demonstrate to everybody that we want to hold the line on taxes, that we don't need to take a salary. That's over $1 million that will be shaved off of your property tax bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Please hold applause. The first question is to Mr. Mitchell. The question is, what grants will you work for park districts? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
What grants will you work for the park district?
What grant for the park district?
Yes.
You mean the Forest Reserve?
Yes.
I believe that the Forest Reserve ought to solve its own problems financially. If there are private sector grants, I would support anything that helps to develop the park or the Forest Reserve sites that we can use to recreate. But I don't believe we ought to take grants from the state or the federal government.
Okay, Mr. Barr, you may respond. You have 60 seconds. The same question. What grants will you work for the Park District and the Forest Preserve?
Thank you. As I walk door to door and talk to the residents, I'm hearing a resounding no to any additional spending. And regardless of where the grants come from, the federal government or the state government, person after person is telling me they do not want that now. We need to focus on cutting our spending, making real estate property taxes more affordable. We're losing seniors because they can no longer afford their homes, and our young people can't afford to buy the homes because of the property taxes. My focus on County Board is to work on cutting spending at all levels until we can get to a good level where we can afford it again, and then discuss what we'll do to spend more money to build services.
Thank you. We're moving on to the next question. For Mr. Barr, what is your main priority as a candidate for the Lake County Board? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
It's like asking a baby if he likes candy. My main priority on County Board, as I've been very clear, is property taxes. I'm a real estate broker. I hear this every day. People call me constantly. They can't afford their homes. They're moving out. We are losing so many residents to the northern border in Wisconsin, it's not even funny. We have to address property taxes now. We can't wait, and we're not talking about just freezing property taxes. We must reverse the course on property taxes and make our area an affordable place to live for everybody, from the young all the way to the old.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, same question goes for you. What is your main priority as a candidate for the Lake County Board? You have 60 seconds to respond.
There are a couple of priorities that I would put right at the main. First is, I would make a pledge that I will not accept or I will return my entire salary from the Forest Preserve and the Lake County Board, and I will lobby all my other county board members to do the same. That will be $1 million shaved off of your tax bill to begin with. The second thing is, I think it would be very easy and prudent right across the board to at least vote a 1 or a 2% reduction in the tax bill and the costs for each one of the departments. The problem is you have a whole bunch of programs that you have to begin to take a look and figure out which ones you want to keep and how you can reduce the cost of each one of those programs.
Thank you. Next question is for Mr. Mitchell. On what issues would you break with your party, or have you broken with your party's views? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I'm not sure that I completely understand what my party's views are. Clearly, to reduce taxes, reduce government spending, to have accountability, we need to get rid of corruption, need to get rid of patronage. Those are the things I would like to stress and work on, because the last two items cost us a lot of money. And until we address the patronage and the corruption, and this could be a variety of different levels, it's still going to cost us a bunch of money, and it's just going to continue. I don't hear the Republican Party or the Democratic Party talk about getting rid of corruption and patronage.
Thank you. Mr. Barr, same question. On what issues would you break with your party, or have you ever broken with your party's views? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Great, thank you. I disagree with my opponent on this. The implication being that my party is rife with corruption, I just contest and I disagree with. I'm a proud Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative, social moderate Republican. I believe in family values. I believe that we need to work together as communities in Republicans and Democrats. These can't be one-way conversations. Everyone needs to be involved in the conversations. With regard to breaking from my party, I don't think I have. I believe my positions are reasonable. I believe they're global, and I believe they work for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Barr, next question. Can you give specific examples where consolidation of county government can happen without impacting services to the constituents? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Sure. The county government by law is allowed to consolidate any taxing body that it has 100% authority to appoint. And I believe there's 28 bodies in there immediately that we can look at. Some of those 28 bodies have been inoperable and defunct for decades. We need to look at which ones are still operating for no purpose and decide which ones make the most sense. Anytime you look for consolidation, you've got to be careful. When something gets wrapped up in a $512 million budget, there's a chance that you lose accountability. So as you look at consolidation, you have to make sure that the entities are accountable to the public before you hide it inside such a large budget where the public can't get access to it.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, same question. Can you give specific examples where consolidation of county government can happen without impacting services to the constituents? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Every fire protection district in Lake County that is not controlled by a municipality, for example, Highland Park, Highwood, Lake Forest, etc., and has an appointed board, all of those could be combined into one fire protection district. Each one of the fire protection districts could be a profit and loss center. Drainage districts should be accumulated, and each watershed should have one drainage concept for the entire length of the watershed. It may mean also doing some stuff with the Fox Lake Water Management Agency in conjunction with McHenry County. The other item is that there are a bunch of sewage treatment plants in districts throughout Lake County that could be wrapped up under Lake County Public Works, and that would include North Shore Sanitary District, and those commissioners make, the last time I looked, $1,100 a meeting as an elected commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, next question. Why are you running for this office? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
Because I believe, first of all, that I have something to offer based upon my prior experience on county board and also serving on a variety of other local government entities. The second thing is, I think it's wrong for a party to think they should only have one candidate running for their office. If we want to get the best ideas out to move our party along, then I think it's important that we have people that challenge this, whether it's 2 or 3 people for one seat. I think that's something we should do and have a challenge for these so the public, like you, have a much better opportunity to listen firsthand from all the candidates.
Thank you. Mr. Barr, same question. Why are you running for office? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Illinois is in terrible shape. A poor business climate is chasing good jobs to our neighboring states. High real estate taxes drive seniors out of their homes and make homeownership unaffordable for our younger generation. Ever-increasing spending and debt threatens to bankrupt our governments at all levels. We need this to stop, and this is why I've decided to run for office.
Thank you. For Mr. Barr, next question. What past political experience do you have? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I currently serve on the Planning and Zoning Board for the Village of Round Lake Beach. I also served on many different foundation boards. I'm very active in the community. I've started several groups, community groups, to work together for community good projects, to bring Republicans, Democrats together to work together as a community to make positive things happen. This is the first race I'm running in as a candidate. I'm not a lifelong career politician. I am a citizen. I'm a small business owner. I'm a family man. This is my opportunity to step into a race and hopefully make a difference and educate the public on what you can do to help us reduce our property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, same question goes to you. What past political experience do you have? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
I mustered out of the Navy in 1974, moved back to Deerfield, my home. First thing I did is I became a precinct committeeman. Then I was elected to the West Deerfield Township organization as a trustee. I was appointed to the Mosquito Abatement District, and I rebuilt that up and opened it up for transparency. Not long after that, I met some people who were running for drainage district and wound up getting on that board and straightening that up and rebuilt the bankrupt drainage district. Then there was some vacancies on the Lake County Board. I got an appointment. I moved up here when I lost a primary race in 1990, was elected to the Lakeville District Library Board, served on there for about 12 years, and the last appointment I had was with the Regional School Board. So I have a variety of municipal government experience spanning almost 40 years.
Thank you. At this time, we will ask our last question unless the audience has any more they would like to submit. This one goes for Mr. Barr. Why should members of the district vote for you on March 20th? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
Sure. Friends and neighbors, when you vote for me on March 20th, you will get a fresh candidate. You will get a candidate who's a family man, who's a small business owner, heavily invested into the community and schools of our district. You will get a candidate with zero interest in being a lifelong politician. You will get a candidate that wants to work continually at addressing our spending problem here and how we can address making it a more affordable place to live. I really want to be your representative, Lake County, and I hope that you vote for me on March 20th.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, same question for you. Why should members of the district vote for you on March 20th? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
Because I have the experience of a bunch of units of local government, and I understand how they should work together, and I understand where their pitfalls are. I'm retired, was married to the same lady for 33.5 years until breast cancer took her away. All 4 of my kids got good jobs. I supported them in local kinds of things. So I understand what has to happen at the local government level. I also understand what has to happen at the county level, and to be able to interface with our state and federal representatives. I believe I have the best mix of experience and understanding of the issues. And finally, I will not take a paycheck, or will refuse it if I have to take the paycheck, for county government. That's almost $50,000 a year. And I will lobby the rest of the members of county board to give up their paycheck. This is not a full-time job, it's part-time.
Thank you. Mr. Barr, you have 60 seconds for any closing remarks. You may begin.
Great, thank you. Again, I just want to repeat, a poor business climate is driving good-paying jobs to our neighboring states. The high real estate taxes are making Lake County an unaffordable place to live. We need this to stop, and we need this to stop immediately. We have to start attacking our spending problems, and we have to start figuring out how we can work together to bring about positive change. When you vote for me, you're going to get a fresh candidate, a candidate heavily invested in our communities. You're going to get a candidate who doesn't want to be a lifelong politician. And you're going to get a candidate with a proven ability to organize and mobilize communities to work together for good, and work with Republicans and Democrats to bring about positive change to our communities. Lake County, when you go to the polls on March 20th, I ask you to please vote for me, Dick Barr, for County Board.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, you also have 60 seconds for any closing remarks. You may begin.
One item that didn't get brought up is I believe there is a path to citizenship. I believe that county government can lead the way to answer the issue of DACA and allow a better process to integrate people who come to this country and want to become citizens and will follow a process. I will work to do that. And if I'm not successful in the primary, I would like to meet with anybody in the community and talk about that. And I also have an idea how to deal with the opioid crisis. And that is to make drugs free, because we want to go after the economic interest that drives this issue in our economy. And when we do that, we will cut the criminal element out of this picture, and we'll deal with opioid problems as a behavior and a public health issue where it should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. At this time, we will take a 5-minute break to reset for the next debate. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Werfel, you have the opening statement. You have 90 seconds. You may begin.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Round Lake Library, Round Lake High School, WRLR Radio for hosting this event, and of course like to thank everybody that's in the audience for coming tonight. I'm Jeff Werfel, and I'm running for re-election as a county board member for District 6. District 6 is made up of Grayslake, Haynesville, Round Lake Park, part of Wildwood, Highland Lake, and part of Round Lake Beach, right smack dab in the center of Lake County. I've lived in Grayslake in Lake County since 1998. I built a home and raised a family here. I've been active in the community during that entire time. I've spent the past 15 years as a local elected official and public servant. First elected as a Grayslake Village trustee in 2003, and since 2014, now as a county board member for the county. Along with my years of experience as your public servants, I also possess over 30 years of experience in the in the business world, and I have a bachelor's degree from Georgetown and an MBA from Loyola University. My priorities are, and always have been as a local official, these things: encouraging economic development and job creation, working to relieve property tax burden of ours, improving county roads, reducing traffic congestion, creating responsive and cost-efficient government.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Werfel. Your time is up.
I'm done.
Mr. Bednar, you also have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Bob Bednar. I'm running for District 6, Lake County Board. And of course, thank you so much to the Round Lake Public Library and the public officials in that organization that helped to sponsor this. WRLR 98.3. I enjoy some of your oldies you play on the radio. And the Round Lake High School and the students that are here helping to moderate and run this forum. Thank you for what you do. And thank you to all of you for taking time out of a Tuesday night that you could have been at home relaxing and watching the kids do homework and having a longer dinner hour and coming here with us tonight. So my name is Bob Bednar. I am running for Lake County Board District 6. I'm a family man, married 29 years. I have one daughter, and we currently have one adopted cat. We've had dogs as pets in the past, but now we're cat people, I guess. I went to Lewis University for 4 years. I commuted all 4 years. I picked up my accounting degree. I basically worked full-time during college. I 100% self-financed myself. I was one of 7 kids, and Mom and Dad just didn't have the cash to finance all of us. After graduation, I worked as a bank controller for 10 years. I did board of directors reports, all kinds of various public speaking about the bank and so forth. After that, I spent 23 years as a mortgage lending officer. So I sat down with homeowners and I counseled them how to buy a home, how to put together the down payment.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. That's the end of the opening statement. Mr. Bednar, you have the first question. The question is, will you vote to lower the tax levy or vote to max out the levy?
If I had my way and I could convince others on the board, we would be reducing the tax levy. As I've walked door to door, I think I've probably knocked on 500 to 600 homes. It is the #1 issue. The #2 issue is property taxes. And #3 is property taxes. They are too high. Everybody's telling me, Bob, when my youngest one gets done with high school, we're out of here. We're looking 10 miles north, 12 miles north. We've already looked at property. We've interviewed realtors. Our neighbor over here had trouble selling their home. They started in the 300s. They're down to 250, and it's not moving. We're looking at severe devastation here in our property values if we don't get a handle on property taxes. Just a few miles north in Wisconsin, they're far cheaper. They're a third of what our bills are. We have to get these taxes under control, and we're going to have to do severe things to do it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bednar. Mr. Werfel, I'll ask you the same question. Will you vote to lower the tax levy or vote to max out the levy? I remind you, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think I'm the only incumbent that's here tonight amongst the races. Yes, my intention for the next fiscal year is to look very hard at freezing the tax levy or even drawing it back if we can. My record on the county board since first getting elected in 2014 was to freeze the tax levy 1 year. And we have very aggressively managed our budget. The county essentially is kind of plateaued or scaled back in its budget. Every year we're asking departments to cut back 2%, 1%, et cetera. So we're really managing those cost drivers. I'll get into more detail if I have more than a minute. But the state's precarious financial situation, we have over $100 million that gets funneled through the state to us, has made some of these tax levy situations difficult because the county could literally stop operating if the state stops, takes away or cuts back on money that funnels into us.
We'll be moving on to the next question. Mr. Werfel, what type of communication and community outreach should this office do?
What kind do I do?
I'll restate the question. What type of communication and community outreach should this office do?
Well, I believe what the office does right now, what I do as a county board member is I attend a lot of other elected bodies, board meetings, such as village board meetings that are in my district. I'm very active with a lot of the civic organizations in the area, Chamber of Commerce, Exchange Club, etc. I have a newsletter, an electronic newsletter that goes up twice a month, which provides information on what's going on with the county and with the Forest Preserve District. Part of the job is to be very active within the community, to meet folks and to take care of constituent service needs, which it's a 24/7 kind of job is what it comes down to. People could be calling you any time of the day or night. Last summer when we had the flooding that we had, that was a great example. I was pretty much going 24/7 for about 3 or 4 weeks there during that time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bednar, I'll ask you the same question. What type of communication and community outreach should this office do?
I've lived here in Lake County since 1991. I've lived in 4 different homes. The first 2 homes I owned were in the unincorporated area of Lake Bluff. And I learned firsthand how important it really was to watch what your county board does, because when you live in the unincorporated, that's your government. When you live in Grays Lake, when you live in Round Lake, you've got your village to rely on, you've got township services, things like that. But as far as governing, when you live in the unincorporated, it's the county board. I would like to do something totally different. There's certainly all of the public meetings that you should attend as an elected official, but what about all the other meetings that are not public meetings? What about neighborhood meetings? I'd like to have neighborhood meetings once a month. I'd like to have them in a real estate office, bank lobby, after hours, invite the public to participate, put flyers on the local neighborhood doors for, let's say, a half-a-mile circle. I know what's going to happen. Folks will show up and they'll talk about the property tax bill and how they can't afford it. And they'll talk about where they want to go.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the next question. Mr. Bednar, what specifically will the county do to jumpstart the economic development in District 6 under your leadership?
I don't know if I have a special bag of tricks in my pocket to spur economic development in District 6, but I can tell you this. In Lake County, even though we're prosperous, even though we have beautiful homes and good neighborhoods and respectable roads, we're getting killed. Up north, the property taxes are 1/3 of what we're paying. I work as a school bus driver, and at 5:30 in the morning, I'm getting in the bus and I'm driving south on Milwaukee Avenue from Grand Avenue. I call it the Milwaukee Expressway. Every other car, and maybe more, are from Wisconsin. They're coming down here for the jobs, and they're taking the paycheck back north. Now, maybe some of those folks lived here before, but they don't anymore. We're not getting the benefit of that. It's the same story when you drive on Route 45 in the morning. Everything going south is from Wisconsin. Less than half of it is Illinois. And the Illinois Tollway, you can see the same story. We have to change things, how we're doing business in Lake County, to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Werfel, what specifically will the county do to jumpstart the economic development in District 6 under your leadership?
Everything that my opponent brings up is true. I've certainly been living that reality for the 15+ years that I've been an elected official locally here, first in Grays Lake, where I was very active in local economic development, and now in the county board. Specific examples of what brought to the district over the years is the FedEx facility that's in Grays Lake, the Saya trucking facility off of Winchester Road, the Cornerstone development, which is slated off of Peterson and should be happening in the next few years. Another company called Okabe is just located and is building their facility by the fairgrounds. The way that we've done this is through innovative public-private partnerships. We work closely with Lake County partners and chambers of commerce, economic development professionals. We are definitely at a disadvantage because of our location in the state of Illinois and being right next to Wisconsin. But we've been very creative and had some big wins. Okay. At the county level, we just got Caterpillar, which is a great example. It's not here in District 6, but it's a great example.
Thank you, Mr.
of the success of the program that we've been pushing.
We'll be moving on to the next question. Mr. Werfel, on what issues would you break with your party, or have you ever broken with your party's views?
Breaking with the party's views, hard to say at the local level. What I try to do in my position as a county board member and as an elected official in general, obviously, is I approach everything with the idea of trying to do what's best for the people that I represent and the communities that I represent. Do the research, talk to people, listen to their concerns, then make some decisions and a way to go forward. So I'm all about improving our quality of life. That's been the mainstay of my whole career as a local elected official. It's been to improve all of our quality of life in whatever way I can at whatever levels I'm at. So if some of those things end up causing a problem with a party, I guess that would be the only situation where that would happen.
Thank you. Mr. Bednar, on what issues would you break with your party, or have you ever broken with your party's views?
I break with my party all the time because I don't like what the House Republican organization and the Senate Republican organizations are doing in Springfield. We've got people running the minority houses for the Republicans down there that are more worried about themselves and making sure that they're the next leader, instead of taking back some seats and putting some balance back in Illinois, where I think you'll get a much better result. You've had one party running the show here for 20 years, and we've got financial devastation. We have 49 states in the United States that are doing extremely well. They're financially booming. You see all the stock markets and all the indices are going up. Bonuses are being paid to big corporations outside of Lake County. But here in our state, we're stuck with this lead pipe, this lead weight caused by the legislature in Springfield. And as county board members, you know, we've gone to the taxpayers for all that extra juice. And we're going to have to figure out a different way to solve this problem.
Thank you. Mr. Bednar, why are you running for this office?
It was a second thought. I originally wanted to run for state representative in District 62. And I'd already drawn up petitions, and I went door to door, and I had 800, 900 signatures. I probably knocked on every door in 4 or 5 precincts. I had some people helping me too. But along the way, it was about the property taxes. In talking with homeowners, property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. People felt like, you know, the Springfield thing, you're only going to change 1 seat. You're not going to make a difference down there. It doesn't matter how much yelling, screaming, dancing you do down there. It's just not going to be the end game. And I sat down with some very close friends, and we talked about 62. There were some very good candidates running. You're going to see them tonight. And we decided property taxes had gotten out of hand. Jeff voted to increase the property tax levy. I decided to run for the county board, District 6.
Thank you. Mr. Werfel, why are you running for this office?
Well, you can see Bob certainly has strong opinions and perspective on the situation down in Springfield. I don't necessarily disagree with them. Fundamentally, and we can ask these questions of the state rep candidates later on tonight, fundamentally, the state of Illinois has a broken funding system for local government and vital services by relying so much on property taxes. And ultimately, the solution to that problem is going to come out of Springfield. What we are forced to do at the local level below the state level is exactly some of the things that you're talking about. Nobody wants to raise property taxes and tax levies, but the pressure is quite great, and the dysfunction in Springfield is quite great. Springfield's very good at taking local money and resources for themselves. I always tell people they've used up all their money to buy votes, and now they're taking local government money to continue doing that. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Werfel. Mr. Werfel, moving on to the next question. Do you think the board members should be paid?
Do I think they should be paid? Well, yes, they're currently paid. The job itself, as was said earlier, it is not necessarily a full-time job. It's not necessarily full-time pay either, but it can be, as I was just mentioning, it can be. It's a lot more work than folks that aren't in the position I've found over the years realize, especially if you're going to be a good representative and be responsive to your constituents. There's a lot of need out there, and if you're the kind of person that likes to help out, it can take up a lot of time. I do not necessarily have a problem with compensating county board members. It's just a matter of how much and the various issues regarding that.
Thank you. Mr. Bednar, your response. Do you think board members should be paid?
I think you're going to have to pay something to attract good people to want to go and do all this work. And I do know it is work. There's a lot of meetings to attend. There's a lot of phone calls. There's dealing with the public. I run an organization called the Republican Assembly of Lake County. I'm their chairman. I've been at that post for a little over a year. The Republican Assembly's been around since 2001. And we endorsed candidates in all of the contested Republican primaries locally and statewide. What we really need to do, though, we need to prioritize some things. We need to talk to our school boards, and we need to tell them that you can't just keep jaking taxes on everybody. You've got to sit down and you've got to come up with a lobbying plan against Springfield. City of Chicago did this and got $300 million for their district. Why aren't we doing the same thing? We're getting cheated. And we're making the taxpayers, because they're the easy targets, pay for it.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. We'll be moving on to the next question. Mr. Bednar, what is the most important issue to you as a candidate for the Lake County Board?
Yeah, we've kind of already beat that one with a stick about 14 times. I think even if you solicited the folks in this room here, everybody would have something to say about property taxes, and most of it very unfriendly. But you know what? We do need good schools, and we do need good park districts, and we certainly need a good Lake County Board. But maybe somewhere along the way, we forgot something. You know, we had this terrible thing in 2008 called the financial crisis, and it's still hitting people today. It personally affected me. It diminished my income so radically, I had to go do something different. And when you're over 55, your options are so limited. So I've been driving school buses for the last 5+ years. I'm a special ed driver. I drive kids in wheelchairs and children with severe emotional and medical conditions. It's rewarding work. But you know what? You're like that kid's best friend, because you're with them a lot. They don't get to run to the park and play. So I will be a very involved county board member.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Mr. Werfel, your response. What is the most important issue to you as a candidate for the Lake County Board?
The most important issues for my entire career as a local elected official has been taxes, traffic, and economic development, and we've touched on all of those issues. I do want to say specifically about taxes that we have a multi-pronged approach here. It isn't just about local units of government like the county board paying for services that the state should be taking care of, or having to make up for lost revenue that's been taken by the state that should be going to us. I am part of the ad hoc political committee that's doing exactly what Bob had mentioned, which is lobbying for fundamental reform down in Springfield. The same goes for grants and things like that. When we talk about getting extra money from higher levels of government. The county is incredibly active in that. Our health department routinely gets all sorts of funds like that. You have to be very good and organized, and definitely the road building that we've done has done a fantastic job of connecting into federal monies and things like that to,
Thank you, Mr. Werfel.
to make some really good improvements.
At this time, we will ask our last question unless the audience has any more they would like to submit. Mr. Werfel, why should members of the district vote for you on March 20th?
I'd like to thank everybody again and the hosts and the sponsors. I've worked hard over the years to help improve our quality of life here in District 6 and in the county. It's work that I've done with many good and dedicated people, and we've made progress toward our goals in an extremely difficult environment. I've truly enjoyed doing my part, but there's still a lot more to do, and that's why I'm seeking re-election to this county board district. And as I said, my motivation is about improving the quality of life for all of us, making things happen that way, and I'm humbly asking to be re-elected. There's been some very good things going on in District 6. We've got the Rollins Road improvement, the Washington Street improvement, the Peterson Road improvement. All that has happened in the last few years, and it's been through excellent management on that front. Same thing with the aggressive way that we manage our finances and everything else. I'll be happy to talk to anybody after this, since we only get very difficult for a politician to keep it to 60 seconds when there's a lot to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Werfel. Mr. Bednar, why should members of the district vote for you on March 20th?
I think members of the district are going to do it because they're frustrated. Because for years they've loyally paid their property taxes and they're looking for the results of that. When you had that economic collapse in 2008, the property tax bill still marched into the mailbox and it still got paid. And it didn't go down, did it? Your property value went down 50 grand, 100 grand, maybe a lot more. And the bill didn't go down because when everybody's property value goes down, they still request the same amount of money in the levy, so your bill still increased. And then as the values have rebounded, now you've really seen it take off, because all of that increase in value is like a little bonus above whatever the levy increases are. I think it's time for new representation in District 6. This is the last time we're going to represent District 6 in its present form. The next election, the district's going to look different. My website is bobbednar.com, and I plan on being your next Lake County Board member in District 6. Thank you. And thank you so much to the folks putting this format on tonight.
At this time, we'll have our closing remarks. Mr. Bednar, you have 60 seconds for your closing remarks.
On November 14, 2017, the Lake County Board voted to increase the property tax levy for the 2018 tax year. The vote was 14-7. 3 Republicans and 4 Democrats wanted the property tax levy to remain the same, so they voted no. My opponent, Jeff Werfel, did vote to increase the property tax levy. My name is Bob Bednar, and I'm running for the Lake County Board. I am running because we cannot afford any more increases in our property taxes. Without a doubt, property taxes are the #1 issue in Lake County. They simply are too high. It's the biggest reason Lake County is losing population. Seniors are selling their homes and moving out. Over 500 families have told me that when their youngest finishes high school or college, they're moving because Lake County property taxes have become unaffordable. By the way, it isn't just the taxpayers that are leaving. Businesses that can't afford to pay those property taxes are also leaving. Lake County government is our largest employer. It wasn't like that when I moved up here. They weren't even in the top 10.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Mr. Werfel, closing remarks. You have 60 seconds for your closing remarks.
My opponent has given a good summary of the issue of the day regarding property taxes. He's absolutely correct. That's the reason that I got into public office when I first started out also. The county has worked very hard. The portion of your property tax bill that goes to the county, here in Grays Lake, the average across the county is 7%. In the Grays Lake, Round Lake Park, Haynesville, District 6 area, it has gone down from a little over 5% back in 2011 to now 4.7%, 4.6%. And again, my career has been all about relentlessly driving cost out of the process, making things more efficient, and while still maintaining a high level of service. I've always called it better, faster, cheaper. My background as a business consultant was exactly in this, re-engineering processes and doing innovative things to make government as cost efficient and responsive
Thank you,
as
Mr. Werfel.
possible.
Thank you, Mr. Werfel. And
That's what I bring to the table.
thank you, Mr. Werfel and Mr. Bednar, for your participation. We will now have a 5-minute break. Okay. Mr. Broad, you have the opening statement. You have 90 seconds. You may begin.
Check. Okay. Hi, I'm Adam Broad, candidate for Lake County Clerk. If you're looking for a clerk who can register more voters, can mobilize the community and increase participation, whose experience as a trustee resulted in lowered property taxes, increasing programs without any kind of austerity, I guess I would be your guy. I hope I can win your vote March 20th in the Democratic primary.
Ms. O'Connor, you also have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
First of all, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm very excited to be here. I will bring a wealth of experience in both service and management to Lake County Clerk position. I was elected for 3 terms as the Libertyville Township trustee, which is a total of 12 years. One of my biggest accomplishments as the trustee was to support and improve our open space properties with new trails and significant developments. I also was on a team which helped administer grants to many individuals within the Libertyville Township operation. I graduated from the University of Illinois and also have both my master's and specialist degree in administration. I am also very close in receiving my doctorate in leadership and management. I have proudly served as a Lake County teacher and administrator for over 25 years. My positions range from teacher, specialist, administrator, to a curriculum designer. I am also an accomplished speaker and presenter in my field. I'm very lucky. I have taught all ages, including college age and adults. Currently, I am teaching part-time at Northwestern University.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor, you have the first question. What is your main priority as a candidate for the Lake County Clerk? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I'm going to read to you my commitments. I believe that will cover this. My commitment is to represent the Lake County Clerk position with dignity and respect, to be fiscally responsible and transparent, to support and provide the newest technology of election cybersecurity, to actively pursue streamlining Lake County Clerk services with efficiency. And also, I believe, to empower women and our youth to enter fields of community service. You see, I'm stepping forward to make a difference.
Thank you. Mr. Broad, you have the response. What is your main priority as a candidate for the Lake County Clerk?
My main priority is election integrity. As a legal worker representing voter protection teams, I've seen enough on the ground to know it's a concern. I have concerns about cybersecurity. I have concerns about the cross-check purge that is denying people their civil rights. They're generally people of color, so it's not a wide concern, but it's a concern to me. I have experience initiating and winning battles against this sort of activity. When I joined the Marine Corps in 1981, I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. That's what I'm trying to do as a candidate. That's why I want to be in charge of the elections here in this county. My experience is hands-on, on the ground, getting things done.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the next question. Mr. Broad,
Yes, sir.
what are the most important skills required to be the Lake County Clerk?
I think management skills are key. I literally grew up in a family business. I worked with my grandfather from the time I was 8 through the time I was about 18 years old. That's about 10 years of experience running a family business, starting out as a dock worker, ending up as an inventory manager. My grandfather also led men in combat during World War II, so there was no better school for how to deal with people or how to manage things. He taught me to take care of the people who take care of you. He taught me how to give respect to get respect. And he taught me how to hold people accountable. And respect has a lot to do with that. And leading by example has a lot to do with that. And I've done that in my work as an organizer.
Thank you. Mrs. O'Connor, your response. What are the most important skills required to be the Lake County Clerk?
The Lake County Clerk position is 75% management of the Lake County office and 25%, these are approximate, of the election. I enjoy serving others. I always have. It's always been a very strong value of mine. And when the opportunity came to me to go ahead and run for this particular position, I began to reflect on my skill set and my passion. And I have a strong background in management and leadership, and I have a strong passion to serve the citizens of Lake County. So I coupled those two together, and here you have it. I strongly want to be the Lake County Clerk for my management skills and for my passion to serve.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the next question. Mrs. O'Connor, how would you make the county clerk position more efficient given the amount of work the office does daily?
In order to make this position more efficient, one has to actually walk in the shoes of the Lake County Clerk. I believe this is a position that whoever wins and becomes the next Lake County Clerk must be able to embrace all of the responsibilities and duties of this position, and yet have the foresight to be a visionary and look at how one can improve the system by streamlining it and making it very efficient. There are areas in many of the areas of different offices that could be better streamlined together and be more efficient across the board.
Thank you. Mr. Broad, your response. How would you make the county clerk position more efficient given the amount of work the office does daily?
Well, first of all, I've managed crews of 5, 15, and 300 in my experience. More important than the size of the crew was getting the results we wanted to get. As Vernon Township trustee, in less than a year, we fulfilled all our campaign promises. We expanded services. We cut the property tax levy 5%. I think those skills are applicable to the clerk's office. A lot of politicians come up here sloganeering about lowering property taxes. I've actually done it. So I think I have the hands-on accounting ability to streamline the clerk's office, just like I did running progressive campaigns on a bare bones budget and producing better results than better funded crews with more numbers, more people on the ground. I did it with less crew. I did it with less budget. We got it done.
Thank you. Mr. Broad, we'll be moving on to the next question. What is the most important issue to you as a candidate for the Lake County Clerk?
Election integrity. Absolutely essential to democracy that we can have faith in the integrity of the election. Robin keeps saying it's only 25% of what the office does, like the essential aspect of our democracy being only 25% of the office is somehow not as important as paper pushing. Look, if you want the status quo, you can keep Carla. If you want reform and improvement, you'll vote for me.
Thank you. Mrs. O'Connor, your response.
I was recently attending a judge's training, and I learned a lot. I think it's very important to do research and be proactive instead of reactive. When I was at that training, I learned that there are two systems with our cyber security. There's a great concern of that. There are two systems, and one is for election and one is for voter registration. These two do not mix. I did not know that until I was at that training. I have learned a lot. One needs to be current, proactive as technology changes. It is important to line the 3 county offices. For example, the clerk is in charge of the tax redemption program. That is a very big responsibility.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor will be moving on to the next question. Why should members of the district vote for you on March 20th?
I enjoy serving others. This has always been a very strong value of mine. I've had many leadership positions in a variety of service organizations. For example, I currently belong to the Libertyville Sunrise Rotary Club, and I am on the Libertyville Days Committee to help support our community center. Yes, I was that scout leader. Yes, I was that school fundraiser director. Yes, I was on the Lake County curriculum board. I just want to say that my values and my service align to this position. And this would be an incredible way for me to continue to serve.
Thank you. Mr. Broad, your response. Why should members of the district vote for you on March 20th?
Well, when it comes to derailing voter suppression techniques, it's something I've done proactively. I don't wait to cry about it on election day or after election day. I've taken proactive action to prevent it before it happens, so I have that experience. And again, about taxes, I think I'm the only one here that's actually lowered property taxes in any capacity. Not that, I don't know if that means anything to you. I think I should just keep repeating that since it's what I hear over and over from voters. Property taxes, okay, well, it's hands-on, it's getting into the budget, it's cutting the waste and adding accountability. I can do that, I've done it.
Thank you, Mr. Broad. Moving on to the next question. Mr. Broad, what do you intend to do to get more voters registered?
Same thing I've always done, organize. Voter contact, tell them what's in it for them, empower them with knowledge. You could do it in a nonpartisan way too, just to let them know what it impacts. A lot of people think the electoral process doesn't affect them, that it doesn't matter. But when it comes to the way government impacts a community, it does affect them on so many levels. What kind of police force you have, the way your tax money is being spent. Voters can set the agenda instead of letting bureaucrats set the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Broad. Ms. O'Connor, your response. What do you intend to do to get more voters registered?
I believe that we live in a very tech world. So I believe that reaching many people often is through the technology of today and tomorrow. I want to give you a figure that there are about 1,700 election judges for this next election. That just gives you the magnitude of how many voters and what we need to do to bring even more. When voter registration was allowed on the day of voting, I believe it was around 5,000 new registrations occurred that day. This couldn't have happened unless we had this advanced tech system. So in many ways, working with technology, branching out, and following protocol, and educating more people about what is available and how they can register to vote is crucial.
Thank you. At this time, we will ask our last question unless the audience has any more they would like to submit. This question goes to Ms. O'Connor. Why are you running for this office?
I am running for this office because I believe my talents and my skill set and my passion to serve will make me a high-level, responsible, dedicated clerk that will empower others to come vote, to serve, and also, I hope that I can make the office of the Lake County Clerk be a very welcoming place to come, because many people come to this office for a lot of different services. I want the office to be streamlined. I want the office to be friendly. I want the Lake County Clerk's office to be a model of welcoming, productive, fair government.
Thank you. Mr. Broad, your response. Why are you running for this office?
Like I said, election integrity. I'm passionate about electoral politics. I've been involved in electoral politics at every level for over 30 years. My legal work has exclusively been a volunteer basis to serve the community. This is something I've been doing for 30 years. This is where my passion is. My wife over there, she says the thing she loves about me is that I'm passionate about everything I do. If my passion isn't there, I don't do it. And I find a way to support doing what I want to do as far as pursuing goals, whether it's writing or organizing for a cause that there is no budget for. I still go out and get it done. I heard an earlier question asked it about, have you ever stood up to your party, to some of the other candidates? When Blagojevich was governor, I volunteered to try to beat him in the Democratic primary for Eisendrath. I was running a business at the time. I owned a business. I was working 70 hours a week on my business. I was still out there volunteering, trying to get him out of office because I knew he was going to be an embarrassment to our party.
Thank you, Mr. Broad. Moving on to the next question. Mr. Broad.
Yes, sir.
Many counties have eliminated the recorder of deeds as an elected position, and to save money, make it a department in the county clerk's office. What are your thoughts?
The devil's in the details when it comes to consolidation. On the surface, it sounds good, but you have to be careful about creating a larger unit of government where there's less accountability, where the person at the top is further away from what's going on at the bottom. But I would have to do a complete analysis of that, and I haven't done it. But I am involved in a consolidation hearing on my township here. We're working on bringing the Highway Commission under the purview of the supervisor and the Board of Elections, and that's just a situation where we're dispersing funds without any way to hold the department accountable, and that's bad government when there's no accountability. The people writing the checks have to have a way to pull the money back or cut it off if they're not getting the desired results. I'm pretty results oriented.
Thank you. Mrs. O'Connor, the same question. Many counties have eliminated the recorder of deeds as an elected position, and to save money, make it a department in the county clerk's office. What are your thoughts?
Again, this is an issue that needs to be explored when I am, I'm hoping, being the Lake County Clerk, where I can walk the shoes, be able to look at everything with a perspective and embrace the idea of consolidation. But again, this is something that has to be done that's a unified decision across the Lake County Board.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor, we'll be moving on to the next question. Would you assist someone as a Lake County Clerk even if you disagree with them ideologically?
Absolutely. The answer is yes, in that the Lake County Clerk's position, in order for it to run smoothly, we have to work together on a united front. I believe if there are issues that we differ, I would have conversations. I would be somebody that would raise possibilities. But I also believe that we need to work together in order for us to accomplish our goals.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Mr. Broad, would you assist someone as a Lake County Clerk even if you disagree with them ideologically?
Of course. To wit, on my Facebook page is a great comment. Someone said I ought to take it down, but it was someone who had wrote, I disagree with 90% of this guy's politics, but since I know he has absolute integrity, I support his campaign 100%. I have donations and support from the other side of the aisle, and I don't do it by watering down my passionately held progressive views. I do it just by being honest about where I stand, and also respecting that we are in a democracy and our disagreements are part of it, and in the end we're all family and we're all Americans. When I joined the Corps, it wasn't just to serve Democrats and progressives, it was to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you know, I have a lot of respect for people who stand up for what they believe, whether I agree with them or not.
Thank you. At this time, we will have our closing remarks. Mr. Broad, you have 60 seconds.
Again, like I said, I love my job right now. I do work that I love doing, but I'm passionate about the electoral process, and I would love to make sure that our system is safe. I would like to take proactive measures against cyber intrusion. I have an advisor who's formerly assigned to the Pentagon, and a Republican, by the way, but an Air Force colonel retired, who's advising me and getting me up to speed on that. I want to make sure that the cross-check purge doesn't disenfranchise voters in Lake County. I've seen it happen, unfortunately, and I don't want it to happen again. One vote, not a single voter should lose the right to vote because of some bureaucratic roadblock. Seems like we've gone from the water hoses and dogs to bureaucratic nonsense.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor, you also have 60 seconds for your closing remarks.
I want to speak a little bit about my role as a township trustee. It was different than other township experiences because I was involved in an open land protection. We protected and maintained about 1,500 acres of open space, including 2 properties that are significant in the Illinois Natural Preserve System. I was involved with the nonprofit grants through the township and the building of a new land pantry, storage and delivery facility. Very significant to Lake County, I also was a part of the Casey Land Use Project, which is going to build, basically we call it a little Yellowstone, which is going to be a gem of the Lake County. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. As a public servant for over 30 years, I welcome another opportunity to serve the citizens of Lake County as your county clerk. I am highly qualified to manage an office of this magnitude. I am highly qualified to make meaningful changes to better the lives of Lake County citizens. I feel that the presence here will set an example for others to step forward and, like myself, make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor and Mr. Broad. We will now have a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
You have 90 seconds for your opening statement. You may begin.
Thank you for this opportunity tonight. My name is Ken Itzstein, running for Illinois House District 62. Decided to seek this race because it's been many years now that lifelong friends and family members have been forced to move out of state. I'm one of 7 children, born and raised in Grays Lake, and outside of a couple of years after high school, I've lived in this district my entire life. I've served the Village of Grays Lake Planning and Zoning Commission for a little over 12 years now. Joined the Grays Lake Chamber of Commerce in 1985. Had the pleasure of serving 2 terms as president. I've always relished the opportunity to give back to the community that's given me so much. I've been a volunteer for PAD's homeless shelter for almost 20 years now. I've also served the community in youth sports. Grays Lake Youth Baseball, Park District Basketball, Grays Lake Colts Football. When I get down to Springfield, I'm going to represent you. I am not going to represent Rauner, not going to represent Trump, certainly not going to represent Madigan. I will represent you and do what needs to be done in Springfield. And will you please vote for me?
Thank you. Mr. Solano, you have 90 seconds for your opening statement as well. You may begin.
Thank you. My name's Adam Solano. I'm also seeking the Republican nomination for the state representative seat. And a funny thing I like to say is I love Illinois. I love Illinois. It's my home. I was raised here. I was born here. I've built my business here. I've raised my family here. And unfortunately, we are quickly approaching, if not already, at a tipping point in this state because we have a massive math problem. And our elected leaders are acting like they have forever to solve it. Our home needs to be defended because the taxes are attacking, our debt is closing in, and the politics are dividing us. For the last 25 years professionally, I have helped many, many people make smart choices with their money. I have represented the fine line between bankruptcy and prosperity in their life. I've helped them negotiate short-term and long-term aspects of their money. And talking about money is a very complex issue because it's personal, and it's intimate, and it's emotional. And I've spent a career mastering them. I've been elected by my peers twice to represent them in our professional association in arguably the most tumultuous time that they have been around. And we had members leaving, our dues were increasing, our assets were draining, and we were looking for additional assets. And it sounds just like Illinois, doesn't it?
Thank you. Mr. Solano, you have the first question. What is your #1 goal if elected, and how do you plan to accomplish that task? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
Yeah, my #1 goal would be twofold. First of all, there's a lot of agreement on getting fair voting maps for our districts. That's #1. #2, there's a lot of consensus in term limits. A lot of people want to talk about term limits for the representatives, which I'm certainly for, but I believe you need a constitutional amendment to do that. So that's some heavy lifting. I think we should first pursue term limits on leadership positions. And I think those two things can immediately restore some faith and trust and confidence in the electorate. To take away the one-party, one-person power away using fair maps and term limits on leadership positions will restore some confidence.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, what is your #1 goal if elected, and how do you plan to accomplish that task? You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
Certainly, while real estate taxes is a big buzz, my #1 priority is going to be to control spending. State of Illinois has almost 7,000 units of government. The next state closest to us has 1,800 fewer units of government than we do in the state of Illinois. We need to bring discussions to the board similar to, let's throw out and discuss a 2% cut across the board, across all budgets. Let's not pick on education or Medicaid or transportation. The spend it or lose it attitude needs to go away. If you've got extra money in your budget, let's bring that to the following year. Audits. Medicaid had an audit in 2011 last. There were 50% of those receiving, of the recipients were receiving funds that they were not eligible for. And 6% of them were not even in the state any longer.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, tell me about a time you had to fight or advocate for what you felt was right. You have 60 seconds to respond. You may begin.
Certainly. I do that all the time in my mortgage world. I've got residents and clients that have issues. They've had problems affording property taxes, qualifying for mortgages, credit problems. So I continue every day to fight and advocate for my clients to get them approved, to get them into their homes, and to keep their families together.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, the same question. Can you tell us about a time you had to fight or advocate for what you felt was right?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I was elected and nominated twice by my peers in my industry to lead our professional association because we were losing members, we were losing money, we were taking on debt, and our dues were going up, and we were looking for additional sources of revenue. We had too many units, too many local associations, but I knew the path forward had to be to reduce and to consolidate, and it wasn't a popular view. So I took several years to cut the budget, renegotiate staff. We completely renegotiated the staff compensation and the benefits and the payment. We sold building that we had owned since 1975, and it was a 4 or 5 year process that I knew if we didn't make these changes, it was an existential thing for us as a group. If we didn't sell the building, if we didn't cut staff and their benefits, how they were paid and when they were paid, if we didn't slash our budgets over and over again, it would have been the end.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Solano, what are your views on welfare? Should it be cut, expanded, or have reforms for it to be better suited?
What are my opinions on welfare? You know, whether it should be cut or expanded, you know, I really haven't given that much thought, to be honest with you, in our district. I know there are lots of issues that we need to address. I'm not sure if welfare is the #1 issue. I don't think it's the #1 issue. But certainly would be open to understanding it. I take a very judicious approach to all the issues, even the ones that I'm not fully and completely knowledgeable on. You have to have a best interest contract. So if I'm the representative, whatever's in the best interest of the district, whatever's in the best interest of the people. So if that means expanding or contracting a certain program, I will be more policy focused than I will be politically focused.
Thank you. Moving on. Mr. Itzstein, same question for you. What are your views on welfare? Should it be cut, expanded, or have reforms to make it better suited?
Certainly reform is big in the state of Illinois. We've got financial problems and haven't had a balanced budget since, you know, '01, I believe, and maybe 14 balanced budgets in the last 40 years. So reform is big. Let's take HB 40 and throwing welfare into paying for abortions. Not a good situation. You know, there needs to be sensible reform. Was there room in the budget for that? I don't think so. Reform is the way to go. We need to be careful. There's a lot that are eligible for welfare, but it needs to be more transparent and reformed.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Itzstein, what do you think about the idea that the state should make local school districts pay for pensions? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I think at this point that is probably not a good idea. It needs to be more state controlled. The whole pension system needs to be revamped. Pensions are a huge problem with our budget. If you were to take and sit down the current retirees, the tier 1, the older ones that are getting close to retirement, and really let them know the condition of our current pension system not being sustainable, they would be afraid. We need to move new hires into 401k type programs, make sure those funds actually get into the account. Tier 2, possibly some renegotiation. Tier 3, in time, Tier 1 and current retirees, those things will take care of themselves in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, you have a rebuttal. What do you think about the idea that the state should make local school districts pay for pensions? You have 60 seconds.
Well, the state's already not properly funding the schools, so I would have grave concern with that part of the budget to know specifically how that's going to work without raising property taxes for us here in this district. So pushing even more expense and more of the burden to the local school district with a history of already improperly and inadequately funding the schools, that gives me great concern. And I would like to know specifically, the governor's proposal, how that would not hurt us here in this district and not send more people over the border. Because as I said before, we're at a tipping point, and if we continue to lose more citizens, we are going to be at this chain reaction of fiscal disarray.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question for Mr. Solano. What is your position on the expansion of Route 53 and the 120 bypass? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I am not a proponent of the expansion of Route 53 and the bypass. And I take a business perspective. It has spent a lot of money on the environmental studies. It has been around forever, and it's gotten nowhere fast. And I prefer to cut our losses and to spend our money and our time on something else. I also don't think our state should be spending that kind of money with a road that we've had so much, well, we don't have the money to spend another environmental study, to build another road. And people are leaving, more people are working from home. And I think as difficult sometimes as the traffic can be, I think all of us would rather spend a few more minutes in our car, if that's the case, than spend more money we do not have.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, same question for you. What is your position on the expansion of Route 53 and the 120 bypass? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I would certainly support expansion of 53, and if we actually need to separate the 120 bypass, I think that's been something that's been discussed years ago. We need to rekindle that. The center line, I believe, was first mapped in 1951. The state dedicated the right-of-way in 1962. I was presented and I saw a map recently. Chicago Tribune prematurely printed a map with the 53 extension and the 120 bypass on it. It's the next concentric circle in our traffic patterns here in northern Illinois, and especially in Lake County. We'll certainly provide a little better quality of life, jobs. How do you pay for this? Tollway first, but also we've now got a big movement from the feds for infrastructure improvements. We need to jump on those opportunities. The right-of-way is, the vast majority of the right-of-way has been purchased.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Mr. Itzstein, how do you propose to increase school funding?
School funding, yes. School funding, we need to find many alternatives to current school funding and move that away from property taxes. I was out with a constituent yesterday knocking doors, older gentleman, 2 years from retirement. He got very emotional. His kids are here, his grandchildren are here. He can't retire here. He will not retire here. He can't afford to retire here. Property taxes need to be reduced. Alternatives to school funding could come in many different situations. You've got to reach across the aisle, find like-minded legislators. Do we move some to sales tax? Do we do real estate transaction fees, possibly? There's other states that are doing many different things and not putting it all on property taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, same question. How do you propose to increase schools funding? You have 60 seconds to respond.
It's been mentioned before, there are lots of units of local government. We've got 7,000 approximately in the state. Texas has about 5,000. Illinois has about 900 school districts. The state of Florida has about 80. I think we can save money also with the Lieutenant Governor's office, eliminating the staff and the people that are there. I think there's some room between the treasurer and the comptroller office. There's some savings there. Sometimes I wonder if we can even afford our bicameral government in Illinois, because you have almost 50% of the budget consumed by Medicaid and pension. So if I read that recently, if that's the case, that leaves the other 50% of the budget to fund schools and build roads and do everything else. We just simply don't have enough, and so we have to get creative. And the organism of government must reinvent itself. It has to, otherwise it becomes self-serving.
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Solano. Should we fund Planned Parenthood? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, Planned Parenthood doesn't, I wouldn't fund Planned Parenthood if it were up to me. So if I were king, that's what I would do. I'm not sure how it really affects our district, or if that's how prominent of a role as a state rep, what we take to the state, whether we fund Planned Parenthood. It's a federal budget item. It's not a state budget item to my knowledge. So yeah, again, I guess I answered the question already.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, same question. Should we fund Planned Parenthood? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I certainly would have some opposition to continue that funding. There is, I believe, Sherry Jessel, District 61, has had a bill she's brought up many times. It's still on the table. There are clinics that manipulate numbers to not have to be inspected. You know, we inspect restaurants. Why aren't we inspecting Planned Parenthood type facilities that are performing abortions? You know, so I would have some real trouble continuing funding of Planned Parenthood, yes.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question for Mr. Itzstein. What should the role of state government be in school safety? You have 60 seconds to respond.
State government should certainly put some statewide opinions as to guideline for the localities. But every area, every neighborhood, every school district is going to have their own unique needs and priorities, and so that should really be more, I think, to the localities.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, same question. What should the role of state government be in school safety? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Yeah, well, school safety these days is a gun issue. It's a mental health issue. It's a family issue, and it's a law enforcement issue. So the state touches all 4 or 5 of those. And how you address each and every one, I guess, will be specific to some of your beliefs and political angles. But the state has a very significant role because it addresses every single one of those. Gun laws, gun restrictions, mental health facilities, how they're funded, things that we do and promote family units or the family units that are breaking apart, and our law enforcement, how they're trained and funded and supported.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, next question. How do you plan on making your campaign promises a reality?
That's easy. Be policy focused, not politically focused. That's the easiest, simplest answer I can give you. I think there are just far too many cultural dynamics in politics that are about power and not serving your public purpose. I have a day job. I love what I do, and I don't plan on doing this forever. And when I hear candidates and elected officials, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and they're more policy focused than the politics, I tend to admire their approach to the way that they are acting out their responsibilities.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, same question. How do you plan on making your campaign promises a reality? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Just staying focused and staying true to what I believe and what I've learned from knocking on just hundreds and hundreds of doors, finding out what's special to our district and to the state of Illinois. And not to be swayed, similar to Adam. I've got a career, been a mortgage banker for 33 years. I can't wait to get down to Springfield to turn things around and make a change. But I've got a career and a job to come back to. I will not be swayed and vote in a manner that might get me reelected. I will stay true to what I believe.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Itzstein, what are the benefits and liabilities for legalizing cannabis in the state? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Okay. I would oppose marijuana for recreational purposes. We've been involved with a huge opioid problem going on, not only locally, statewide, and nationally. I still believe the stats that are telling us that recreational marijuana is still the next, is the gateway. The users will continue to look for that next best high. Is it heroin? Is it the opioids? We just can't put that out there as a recreational opportunity when we've got evidence that the opioid problem is growing Grayslake's been, Grayslake, I should say, yeah. Lake County has certainly been a national leader in trying to stay in front of the opioid issue, but I would oppose recreational marijuana.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, same question.
Yeah, I think there's a number of issues with it. First of all, I think it's a greed-based philosophy, so I just disagree with that philosophically. And it also just rubs me the wrong way that we would look to legalize a substance that would eventually get in the hands of our children. So if we're looking to pass marijuana laws to balance the budget or fund our pensions, it drives me crazy that we've already tried casinos and video gaming and the lottery, and none of those have panned out. Those were all greed-based solutions that didn't pan out the way they should. And in my opinion, those that want to legalize marijuana, it's kind of like that crazy cousin or crazy uncle at the family reunion that's trying to sell you a get-rich scheme, and he should just go out and get a job.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Solano. Do you think that imposing term limits would improve the efficiency of the state legislator? You have 60 seconds.
You know, I'm very good friends with some folks that make a living being lobbyists, and they generally don't like term limits, and I understand why they don't, because they need to establish relationships with legislatures so that from those relationships they can educate and have some influence one way or the other. So that's why I am more inclined to pursue first. I think it's lower hanging fruit term limits on leadership positions, which can be done internally within the General Assembly without passing a constitutional amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, same question. Do you think that imposing term limits would improve the efficiency of the state legislator? You have 60 seconds.
Term limits certainly have some value. The voters also will dictate some term limits with a lot of our candidates and incumbents. There is, I mean, I look at getting down to Springfield and figuring out that the first year, you know, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be figuring out where the bathroom is. We need time to learn things. Term limits can't be too short for legislators. For leaders, absolutely. We need term limits. We need to discuss that right away. Someone being in control for 35, going to be 36 years at the end of this year is just unacceptable. The command of power there is just not right. So there would definitely be an advantage for leaders to have term limits.
All right, thank you. There's going to be the last question for Mr. Itzstein. How will you ensure that your constituents' voices are heard in Springfield? You have 60 seconds.
Knocking on doors, talking to people, being involved as I have been for decades already. I've already demonstrated through heavy involvement in the community since 1985. I will continue to be a voice, to be out there. I'm in sync with the district. I am a reflection of the district, and I will continue to do that as I serve the district.
Thank you. Mr. Solano, same question. How will you ensure that your constituents' voices are heard in Springfield? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I guess outside of the normal social media that we all use and employ, whether it's personally or professionally, the most basic form of, and most intimate form of communicating in the political process is going door to door, is knocking on that door and putting yourself out there and engaging somebody in a conversation. There's no better way to understand what's going on in your community, to find out the needs and the wants and the desires when people are hurting, and to let someone express themselves directly to the representative. And that's a process, that's part of the process as this election, is that the candidate needs to get a certain amount of signatures on his petition, whether you're an incumbent or a newcomer. And I would continue to get the majority of those signatures myself.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to closing remarks. Mr. Solano, you have 60 seconds for any remarks that you would like to make.
I would say, first of all, Illinois needs an upgrade in its management. It doesn't need an exodus of its citizens. And if I'm the nominee for the Republican Party for this position, And if I become the state representative in this district, I can sum up my promise to you in one word, and that is elevate. And I promise that I will elevate the people in this district and the people in Illinois. I promise I will elevate our policies, and I promise to elevate our politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Itzstein, you have 60 seconds for your closing remarks. You may begin.
Again, my name is Ken Itzstein, running House Rep District 62. The goal in this election is to choose the best Republican candidate who has the best opportunity to win in November. I have Daily Herald endorsement along with a large pool of other endorsements from mayors, township officials, current and former countywide officials, including the gentleman who formerly held this seat as House Majority Leader. So what does all this mean? This means that these elected public officials are choosing me to be the best candidate to beat the Democrat in November. They know me, they know my district, they know politics, they know my opponent. They have chosen me to be the best candidate. Will you please vote for me also?
Thank you. We will now be taking a 5-minute break to prepare for the next debate. We'll start with an opening statement by Mr. Bennett. You have 90 seconds for your opening statement. You may begin.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Doug Bennett, and I appreciate you staying till the 10th inning to watch the end of this whole forum. I know it's getting late for all of us. My name is Doug Bennett. I'm running for Congress in the 10th District for the right to challenge Brad Schneider in November. I am a historian and mathematician. I'm a business consultant. I have 35 years of experience. I live in Deerfield, Illinois. I'm married. I have 3 children. I've seen a lot of things over the last 55 years. I've done a lot of different experiences, and I think that those experiences are why I'm going to be the best candidate to take on Brad in the fall, and why I should have your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Wines, you have 90 seconds for your opening statement. You may begin.
So let me just start by echoing Doug here and thanking all of you for being here. Thank you to the Round Lake Library and to the high school for putting this on and giving all the candidates a chance to speak. And thank you to all the hardy souls hanging in here till the end to hear from all of us. It shows your commitment to good government here. My name is Jeremy Wines. I live in Highland Park with my wife Leslie and our 3 young kids who are 8, 6, and 2. And I'm running for Congress because the challenges facing our country at this moment are massive. And I don't think that they can be met with the same old people running for Congress saying the same old things year after year. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in the minute that I have here. I grew up in a small town here in Illinois. I've lived my whole life in Illinois. My dad was a farmer in a little town of about 6,000 people in western Illinois. My mom was a preschool teacher. Made my way to Chicago for law school, graduated from law school, having borrowed and paid my own way and worked my way through college and law school, first in my family to graduate with a 4-year degree, brought me to Highland Park where my wife Leslie was born and raised. We are going to have a lot of chances here to talk about the important issues coming up in this race. I think we have great candidates on stage. I have been endorsed by the Chicago Tribune, the Daily Herald, and the Sun-Times. So I've been endorsed by all 3 major newspapers as the candidate that can best challenge Brad Schneider in the fall and hopefully put this district back in Republican hands. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, you have 90 seconds to respond as well.
And thank you all for being here. I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm excited also for us to get to the primary and get an election result. We've been campaigning for about 6 months now. I'm very, very excited in particular because I have a great idealism about America. I think America works and functions well when citizens step up to represent the interests of their fellow human beings. When citizens come out of the private sector and support and use their knowledge, their instincts to represent both their ideas and their principles in Washington, and they do it for a short period of time and then they go back home. I'm also interested and excited because I have something to offer right now. I'm a physician and successful entrepreneur, and in particular, healthcare and small business need our attention. Healthcare right now is broken. We have higher out-of-pocket costs, we have higher insurance premiums, and for that reason, we need to address these issues. We need people that are medical doctors. I think there's an echo with my mic. But we need medical doctors and healthcare professionals that can really resolve healthcare in a unique way. And also with respect to small business, I'm an entrepreneur that started my own business and grew my own business. I understand what it takes to create jobs. I've signed both sides of a paycheck. I've taken risks. And I think that's relevant experience for Congress. So both in terms of putting the American people back in control of their government, in terms of term limits and citizen legislators, as well as improving healthcare and small business, I think that's what I bring to this race.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the questions. The first question is for Mr. Wines. The question is, what are your views on gerrymandering? You have 60 seconds to respond.
What are my views on gerrymandering? I'm not a fan of it. I think one of the biggest problems that we face as a country is that we have too few districts that look like this one, where you have competitive elections year after year, where politics tends to be played between the 40-yard lines, where you typically, over the last 40 years, I would say, not at this current moment, we've had members of Congress representing this area who were willing and able to work with both sides of the aisle. And I think a big part of that is that these districts, including this one, that have been written by politicians to keep themselves safe election after election. So I think a big focus of this campaign is restoring good government, and I think we need to take a serious look, and this is going to happen at the state level, and maybe Congress is something they can take a look at as well, to actually have independent maps, contiguous congressional districts that look like the areas that members of Congress live in.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Bennett. What are your views on gerrymandering?
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, just a little spaced out. First of all, gerrymandering and the decision about who draws the map is a completely state affair, and it's really not within the wheelhouse of any of the federal candidates up here. And while I want to see a better way of drawing the maps, it turns out that no matter how we do it, whoever gets to pick who draws the map, that's a political process, and politics is always involved. My hope for this next election is that both parties and everybody can have representatives at the table. I think that's very important. But I doubt that you'll ever be able to take politics out of the map-making business, because politics is how we decide things, and it'll always be there, whether you see it clearly or not.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, same question. What are your views on gerrymandering?
Sure, thank you. So I'm a strong proponent of the best, most qualified people being able to step up and run for office. And I think fair maps is a critical part of that. If there's two innovations that are going to change the trajectory of our country, I think one of them is term limits, the other one is fair maps. With fair maps, we're going to have a vibrant competition in each district. We're not going to have districts that are set aside and non-contested for generations, much less decades. And so I fully support fair maps. I think that I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe the Supreme Court will chime in here to give us some kind of roadmap towards that. But fair maps are probably the biggest step we can take, in particular, to encourage numerous people to step out of the private sector and step into public office, or at least run for public office.
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Shaw again. What are your views on the FCC repealing net neutrality? Do you agree with that decision, or should it be overturned? You have 60 seconds.
I think it's a complicated issue, and I am not a tech expert. But I will tell you that here's the competition, right? We want to have a fair marketplace. We want there to be a competitiveness and a pricing associated with the competitiveness as it is to deliver data. And we're addressing concerns where we have unprecedented positioning. The world is changing faster than we are responding to it. There was a great book I read recently called Thank You for Being Late by Thomas Friedman. And he was pointing out that the rate of change itself has increased. So it's not just that we're changing even at a more rapid way than we were changing before. And so I think we need to have experts that are quickly and iteratively addressing this issue.
Thank you. Mr. Wines, same question. What are your views on the FCC repealing net neutrality? Do you agree with the decision, or should it be overturned? You have 60 seconds.
So I think that the reason why, one of the big reasons why our economy has been flourishing lately has to do with tech. And this is not an area where I think we need government regulation. I think generally speaking, I'm in favor of less government regulation, not more. And the reason why I think the internet has been the huge growth engine that it has been is because it hasn't been something that Congress is, or that the government is wading into, and instead of letting job creators in the free market determine this. So another thing I would point out is that there are some real concerns on the side of those who are opposed to net neutrality, and one of them is you have huge amounts of data coming from 2 or 3 companies, and it's going to continue to grow, and only limited amounts of broadband to deliver that data. So I think this is an area where the free market can address these concerns. So it's not an issue that I have a real problem with what the FCC did.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, same question. What are your views on the FCC repealing net neutrality? Do you agree with that decision, or should it be overturned? You have 60 seconds.
I support the decision to repeal net neutrality. I think that the government should intervene in things like this only in monopoly situations where there's a clear way for somebody to abuse their market position, and I don't see the ISPs being in that position. So I think that the answer to this is competition, and that is repeal it and let the market do its thing. I think we'll get the right answer.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. For Mr. Bennett, how do you feel about the U.S. military budget? Should it be expanded, stay where it is, or be cut? You have 60 seconds.
I think that while I support the U.S. military, and I think we have to be smart about what we're doing, we have extended ourselves in a lot of areas across the world. And the fact is that we're spending more than we take in, and there's a whole bunch of programs out there that we have to look at if we're going to live within our means. And we have to be hard-nosed about looking at all the programs out there and not exempt our favorite program from this. So if we're going to balance the budget, we're going to have to bring everything to the table and look at it all, or we're just going to continue on our path of increasing debt. So I would be open to that if that is part of an overall way to get to a balanced budget and a sustainable path for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, same question for you. How do you feel about the U.S. military budget? Should it be expanded, stay where it is, or be cut?
Sure.
50 seconds.
So generally speaking, too, I feel like often these are sort of the political narrowness with which sometimes our discussions and debates are, where it's sort of on this program, do you want to cut it? Do you want to add to it? Do you want to subtract from it? And we do have to look globally at our overall budget. But in particular with respect to military spending, which is very important, especially in the 10th District, we want to modernize and look at things that are going to be the next generation of threats. So cyber threats, threats to switches, to system boards, to plane routing mechanisms, threats to our medical supplies and medicines, threats in terms of biology and chemical issues that go through different manufacturing plants or other issues. Those are the kind of threats also that we want to focus on and make sure that our defense spending meets the future challenges. It's not, focused on what we've been doing in the past. And so I think we got to be efficient and careful about it, but sort of politically looking at just one thing is not the right answer.
Thank you. Mr. Wines, same question. How do you feel about the U.S. military budget? Should it be expanded, stay where it is, or be cut? You have 60 seconds.
It was recently expanded, and I heavily support what was done to increase our military spending. I've been privileged to spend the last 10 years of my life working in the national security and foreign policy arena, helping to solve some of the biggest challenges that we've faced internationally as a country. And one of the problems that we've faced the last 10 years is that we've been trying to operate militarily in an environment where we were spending less and less. And we've seen it recently with some of the accidents that have occurred. Our readiness, our military readiness was not optimal. And I think part of that had to do with the need to modernize, but a big part of it had to do with that we were spending not enough on our military budget. And that had to do with the sequestration package package that was passed in 2011 or so, which I opposed at the time. I encouraged Congress to do away with, and I'm very happy that they have done so. So I think we need to spend more on our military to meet the needs of the 21st century and look for other opportunities to cut in both the discretionary and the non-discretionary spending.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question for Mr. Wines. Do you support the deferred action for childhood arrivals? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I support doing it legislatively. I think that it is the big, if you want to look at a big problem in our politics, the fact that we haven't had a bipartisan deal on the Dreamers in the last 4 months is emblematic of all that's wrong in Washington. We had Democratic leadership walk into the president's office, and everybody walked out kind of looking like we were going to have a deal, and then everybody retreats to their own corners for political purposes. So I actually want to move on the president's outline that would allow 1.8 million Dreamer eligible kids to remain here on a path to citizenship in exchange for border security. That's what the compromise is going to have to look like to get something done legislatively. And if I was in Washington, I would not just be a vote for a package like that. I would be banging down doors of my Democratic and Republican colleagues to actually figure this issue out and remove this festering wound from our politics and keep the Dreamers here.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, same question. Do you support the deferred action for childhood arrivals?
When I look at the problem with illegal immigration, I don't think that we can take 1.8 million out of 11 million and try and solve them separately, because if we do that, what will happen is that we then have family reunification problems that we will have to talk about and all these other things. I think that you really need to look at this as what are we going to do about the people who are here, and you have to solve it at one shot, because you're not going to be able to take 3 people from this community and leave the rest behind. So I do support enforcing the border. I do support a much tougher line about what we're going to do for people here, but we need to come up with an answer for the people who are here. We're not going to send them home, and we need to do it for all 11 million. We're not going to piecemeal it, 100,000 here or whatever. So we need to have an overall solution, and I think that this will not lead us to that. It'll just lead us to gridlock, and I think you're already seeing that.
Thank you. For Mr. Shaw, same question. Do you support the deferred action for childhood arrivals?
Sure, thank you. So I'm the son of immigrants. My parents immigrated here from India. They immigrated legally. Our families certainly benefited from legal immigration. I was born in Waukegan, where my dad's first job was when he arrived here. And I think with a lot of legal immigrants that have kind of done everything correctly, they tend to view this issue sort of very carefully and narrowly. But I've always said that I think minors that came here without knowledge on their, illegally here, they represent a different subset of people. We've never in our criminal jurisprudence and our American jurisprudence assigned the same culpability to minors that we do to adults. And so I think they are a different class. I think we should create a permanent status for them legislatively. And I think we should do that soon so that we don't let these kind of issues that there's wide agreement on continue to fester and take up our political dialogue.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the next question. This is again for Mr. Shaw. What are your thoughts on gun control? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Sure. Gun control is obviously in the news right now, in particular with the recent tragedy in Parkland. Our hearts go out to all of those families and students that have been obviously very traumatized. I support reasonable common sense restrictions to gun rights. In particular, I think that we can immediately ban bump stocks and slide fire mechanisms. I think most Americans support comprehensive background checks as well. But those aren't really comprehensive in terms of preventing these tragedies going forward. We have to have our agencies work together. Our law enforcement agencies talk to one another to effectively prevent people who we know there's issues with from getting access to guns. I'm also a physician. I think very carefully from a mental health perspective. We have to pay attention to people that have mental health issues and prevent them from getting guns as well. And so I think sort of narrowly focusing in on gun control is to perhaps just miss maybe the broader issue. And all of those things are necessary for a comprehensive solution.
Thank you. Mr. Wines, same question. What are your thoughts on gun control?
So I grew up, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a small town community, farmers and hunters, and gun ownership was ubiquitous, and it's because of that, not in spite of it, that I support common sense measures to reduce gun violence in this country. I think that it is the time for universal background checks to strengthen the background check system. I think there's also a lot we can do before we start passing new laws to enforce and strengthen the laws that are currently on the books. In particular, what I refer to is the straw purchasing issue. There currently isn't federal legislation to make straw purchasing illegal on a federal level. I would support legislation like that. I also think with what happened in Florida in particular, we need to take a look at the idea of a temporary restraining order for those for whom there were these warning signs, like the individual in Florida, where loved ones, people in positions of authority, can have gun rights temporarily taken away from somebody who should not have had them, like this individual in Florida.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, same question. What are your thoughts on gun control?
Right. So we've done this at a fair number of forums. I suspect, or I believe, that the bump stocks were automatic weapons and should have already been regulated. I thought that was a mistake on the part of the ATF, and I thought that they should just fix it right now. That's an administrative fix and not a legislative fix that doesn't require more laws. It's tragic to see what happened, and not only that, when we look at the news coming out, it seems that this was a completely preventable thing. We knew this guy was in trouble. We knew he had problems. We went there, and the FBI dropped the ball. All these people dropped the ball along the way. So it would be good to strengthen the procedures by which we communicate between the FBI. It would be a very positive thing. I do think that we should look into new forms or new ideas that we haven't tried before, like the gun violence restraining orders that are in place in California. But once again, those are state regulations. At the federal level, all we can do is make it easy and quick for you to find out if somebody is on the list of people who should not have guns or be able to buy ammunition.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, starting with Mr. Bennett. What is your position on regulating pollution emissions that can impact the climate?
So this is kind of a wide-ranging thing. We're looking at kind of a trade-off that we're looking in between protecting our environment and making sure we don't crash our economy. And everything we do in business and how we live our lives creates pollution to some extent or another. So what we need to be cognizant of is we want cleaner energy. We want to be able to have, 30 seconds to explain climate change. We want to have a better set of regulations, but we also can't just like sign accords like the Paris Accord, which I disagreed with, where we would regulate our country and our economy and let other people do whatever they wanted, because I think that's counterproductive and it doesn't solve the overall problem.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, same question for you. What is your position on regulating pollution emissions that can impact the climate?
Sure. So I think in general, I want to say first that I'm a scientist. So I look at data, I look at research, and I take that into account in terms of what the correct way to move forward is. And I think our environmental researchers have done a good job generally. I think what we have to do as policymakers is balance those interests with those of business. What we can't do is go in an overarching direction or extreme direction which would impact negatively our businesses, especially here in the 10th District. We obviously all want to protect our natural resources, but we need to keep that balance, and that needs to be our framework. Also, I think we need to do as much as we can to support innovators, especially people that are entrepreneurial in this area, that are cutting edge, that are bringing new things to light. And I think that's something that we haven't done in the past.
Thank you. Mr. Wines, same question. What is your position on regulating pollution emissions that can impact the climate?
So I agree with what's happened, just outlined. I think this is, my position on this is that climate change is occurring. I think the science is settled on that. Where I do think there's a good faith policy disagreement that we need to be able to conduct in a rational way is about what we do, what the cost benefit analysis of any regulation or any new law is going to have on both the climate and as it impacts business and economic growth. So we need to be able to discuss it in that way. A couple things I think we can do now. I think we can devote more funding to studying the effects long-term of climate change so we know what is a good, a sensible way to combat it, because it's going to keep happening over a number of decades here. So let's figure out what we can do to actually stop it. And I actually think the one thing we can do in a bipartisan way is approach it through tax policy. Instead of the mandate and subsidy approach that exists now, the heavy regulatory approach, let's reward those who find energy-intensive ways through tax policy, through tax credits and the like, to reward them for clean energy policies.
Your time is up. We're sorry, we unfortunately have to move to the next question. This will be the last question, going with Mr. Wines. Should campaign spending be limited? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Yeah, campaign spending should be limited, and it is now. But we've answered this a few times, and what I always like to point out to people is that there are no simple solutions to this, and that the law of unintended consequences hangs over everything we do in the campaign finance realm. Congress thought they had solved this about 15 years ago with the McCain-Feingold Act, and instead what has happened is it has empowered third-party outside groups at the expense of political parties. It's empowered self-funding candidates who can have the ability to dump in hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of their own money, because it's harder and harder to actually raise it from individuals. So anything that we do when we try to regulate speech in this way, there's going to be unintended consequences. So I do think we need to take a look at, since it's been about 15 years, some new things that we can do to make it easier for the common man to run for office, and to crack down on third-party spending that is corrupting our politics.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, same question for you. Should campaign spending be limited?
The trouble we have is that when people get together in a group and decide they want to spend money, and the government steps in and says, no, I don't like you doing that, what it becomes is an incumbency protection business. And one of the things that keeps incumbents in business is to make sure their opponents can't be heard. And that's the most important thing they can do. So the reason Congress likes campaign finance reform is it usually helps incumbents and it usually hurts challengers. So I'd rather have more people run, more competitive races, and I'd rather have more sources of funding and more ways for people to have their voices heard than fewer. So I tend to disagree with the overall understanding that if we took all the money out, then the people who would benefit would be the challengers. I think if you took most of the money out, what you'll find is the people who really benefit are all the insiders. So I disagree with the premise, and I think that this goes the wrong way.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, same question for you. Should campaign spending be limited?
Thank you. It's obviously difficult to legislate caps, but I want to give a couple facts. So in our congressional campaign, an individual can give a maximum of $2,700 other than what you can put in individually. PACs can contribute $5,000 per cycle, primary and then also for the general. But there's all this outside spending of outside PACs as well that can chime in sort of whenever they want, and they can take in large swaths of money. And I think it is reasonable to ask for them to have more routine and transparent disclosure, more maybe weekly or monthly disclosure above a certain threshold as opposed to quarterly or semi-annually. So that's something to think about. But ultimately, I think the time that money doesn't matter in politics and this issue is resolved is when the public is so engaged that they're not affected by what the money buys. And I see that most of the campaigns in this country are spending their money on advertisements or mailings or other things. And I think that when citizens become so engaged themselves that are learning about each race themselves, I think they really blunt the impact of that money overall.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to closing statements. We'll start with Mr. Shaw. You have 60 seconds to make any closing remarks.
Sure. Thank you all for being here today. My opening was a little bit disorganized because of the mic, so I just want to very succinctly summarize what I think this election is about. I think this election is a choice about what you want to see in terms of the congressman that you hire. Do you want somebody that has real-world experience, somebody that's been doing things in the private sector, somebody that's going to bring that information, bring that experience with new ideas, serve for a maximum of 6 years? I'm the only person in this race that signed the term limits pledge, and then get out of the way for the next citizen legislator. It's a succinct, different approach to government. I think one that's correct, one that I would like to see in 435 districts, and that's the choice you have in this primary.
Thank you. Mr. Wines, you have 60 seconds to make your closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating tonight, and thank you to all of you for being here and just sticking it out with us here to the very end. So what I think this primary is about is who can best take on Brad Schneider in November. And I think I'm that candidate, and I'll give a couple reasons why. I think if you're going to win here in a difficult environment for Republicans, you have to meet 3 factors. You have to have done important work, have career accomplishments that I think everybody at this podium has. Mine have been in policymaking and in the foreign policy arena. You have to have strong connections to this district. I'm raising a family, 3 young kids here. My wife is born and raised here, and the work that I've done has been in partnership with folks all across this district, Democrats and Republicans over the years, to get important work done. And then I think you have to be a fit for what this district has elected for 40 years. So I'm a candidate who's fiscally conservative and socially moderate, and all of those reasons are why I've been endorsed by the Tribune and the Sun-Times and the Herald to represent our party in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, you have 60 seconds for any closing remarks.
All right. I do appreciate you all staying to the last minute here, and I know it's getting late, so we're going to try and make this pretty quick. I like to think of this as about who represents you, and it comes down to that. Your representative has to understand you. He has to share your values, speak with your voice, and have your back on tough votes. They have to be able to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not at times. And you have to be able to go up to them and talk with them and have straight answers. I think that's really important in this race, and I think that I've brought a lot of innovation in all the places I've been. I have a strong financial and mathematics background. I think most of what Congress does is mathematics, so you can hire another lawyer, of which there are about 400, or you can hire like maybe the first or second mathematician to solve some of the number problems we have. I would suggest you do that. It's been nice running with you guys. If this is our last forum, by the way, I'm just going to say thank you for all this. And thank you all for putting on this show and having us come into your homes and here. And thanks for the moderators. You've done a great job. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing in this event with us. We appreciate the candidates and community members taking the time to participate and making us all more informed citizens. We encourage you to go out and vote on March 20th. Have a good evening.